What's going on YouTube? E30 NJ. I figured today I'd finish up the rust video, so I hope you enjoy it. I began by cutting out the rotted parts which I would no longer need. I then made what's otherwise known as a patch and cut it out. And with a simple MIG welder, I tack welded in those pieces. And this is what it looked like after being tack welded in. I laid down a very light primer coat and then redid it with another coat to see where the high and low points were in the metal, meaning that as I sanded, you can see where the metal will stick up and stick down, and then you know where to place the Bondo. I made a trip to Home Depot to see what type of body filler they would have. I found where the Bondo was, and I wasn't too sure what to get at first, so after doing some research, I found out that Bondo glass is specifically for fiberglass cars. This would be your Corvettes, or you could use it for a boat if you're restoring one of those. And so I found out that I need Bondo filler, which is for metal cars that involve a layer of Bondo on the top. So I'll be getting one of those cans. I bought some of this stuff called Naval Jelly Rust Dissolver, and I also bought a can of primer by Rust-Oleum. This stuff is great. I started off by taking down all the primer which I had just applied in the patches. This will help the Bondo cure and stick to the metal. I opened up the Bondo and I made my mix, and I did it on a mixing board, which you'll need. This is a 1:50 ratio. The hardener is the 1 and 50 is the rest of the Bondo. After mixing the Bondo consistently, I laid it out onto the fender. You want to work quickly with this stuff, but you also want to be very careful at what you're doing. You don't want to have too much, but you don't want to have too little. And you can do it in layers. You don't have to get it all the first time. I then laid down wax paper on top of it, and this is just to get the right feathered edges and contours of the car. And you can also lay down blocks of wood, or I used my little block sander on that part. And then I sanded it after it dried. And after it dries, you can just peel the wax paper off and start sanding. And I can't even count how many times I sanded and reapplied Bondo, and sanded and reapplied Bondo. It must have been 10 or 20 times. But after you're done, you get it just about perfect. And that is when you begin wet sanding. And wet sanding involves just a little bit of water and a very light duty sandpaper, and you want to just go in where you sanded before to get all the very fine little scratches out of it. While one of the primer coats was drying, I flipped the fender over to the back side, and I had to get off a lot of that extra Bondo that you see on the back that has leaked through the little tiny holes. So I just took a little chisel, you could use a knife, whatever you want, and I cut away at the Bondo that's there. And this is just so I can take the extra Bondo out. And then I poured in that navel jelly stuff into a little cup. And this stuff reminds me a lot of Pepto-Bismol, but it works wonders, because I thought that before I applied it, I got all the rust out. That was not the case. This stuff gets in all the little edges and cracks and dissolves the rust. It really does. I'll show you some pictures. And this is what it looked like after I believe it was the 4th or 5th coat of primer. You see that little crack to the bottom right? That got filled in when I put the Bondo on the back after the navel jelly stuff dried. And after my 6th coat of primer and Bondo, this is what the fender looked like. It was just about perfect. It's also not a bad idea to clean up where the fender goes on, as well as put a thin coat of undercoating on it, just in case water gets there. And I tested the fitment of the fender. I was actually pretty surprised at how well it fit. Now it's time to put all the bolts back on. This involves putting on the tops, but do it loosely so you can shift the fender around just to get the right edges, because you don't want misaligned body parts. It looks hideous. I also found out that if you take the liner out of the wheel well, you can access the door jamb bolts much easier. Don't forget about the 2 bolts hiding in front of the fender, as well as the ones hiding behind the molding piece. This is how it fit after I tightened down everything. I know I got a small crack in the Bondo, but I'll fix that. I had a bit of overspray on the top, and I tried removing it with a little bit of wax, but that didn't work. I was surprised at how well carburetor cleaner worked. You have to be very careful with this stuff, as it can remove the paint off the car. Just spray it into a little rag and start wiping in circular motions. This will take off all the overspray. And this is what it looked like after being all cleaned up. I was pretty amazed at how well this worked. I wasn't expecting that I would actually do this good of a job, my first time ever doing body work on a car, but I was pretty surprised. So anyway, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Sorry that I haven't made a video in a while, and I should be making my next video on valve adjustments. Thanks, stay tuned. E30 NJ.